So just to circle back, so we're going to move the primary PD over as part of the migration. We're also going to move over projects that were started and approved with a critical issue. So we did that in November of 2019. We added the requirement to put the critical issue association. It replaced the planned program association. So since that time, every project has it. In addition, if you made a change to a project, like a change request and report, you would have had to add that at that time. So it's basically a 1.5-ish of data plus some. We know it's not all the project, but that's the first grouping we want to move over to NRS. It's the freshest, latest data. We're going to have a second wave, and that's another thing we're going to talk about, where we're going to get everything else that's still active. The only thing we want to clarify is that we will not be migrating any projects that are scheduled to end by September 30th of this year. Those projects should close out and report and continue doing all of the normal things for a final technical report and other closeout activities in the older system. We are not going to bring them over. The other bullet here that you're seeing also is, and I mentioned it sort of when I kicked off, which is we've retired the ability to start a hatch multi-state or Evans-Allen from report. So you won't see it there anymore because it's going to be in the new system in just a few weeks. So what I wanted so in addition to the research project, which is going to have the ability to save, submit to an organizational review process and submit to NIFA, that whole workflow for research. We've picked up the ability for extension to have that organizational review as well. Okay, so what that means is that unlike today where you would create an extension program and it immediately be available to NIFA and to your organization as a live active program, we're going to dial that back, let you save a draft and work on it, work out the details with your internal processes. And then when you're ready, you would submit it to organizational review. And then after that, you submit to NIFA. Now, at that point, NIFA is going to do what it's always done. NIFA is going to look at that in the context of the plan of work, which happens, updated every year. They're going to look at that as part of the plan of work and get the approval done as part of that process. Now, we also have built flexibility, and if you recall, you can start an extension program off cycle from that. In that case, if you submit it in the middle of the year, NIFA will be alerted that the program has started and they'll be able to take a look at it then. They may wait to save any comments until the plan of work review, or they may reach out to find out a little bit more about it if they need to. But you are free as soon as you submit that program to proceed with these extension activities. Unlike research, which requires NIFA to do the approval. We think this model will work. We're going to continue iterating on it. We're going to continue reviewing it and making sure it's consistent. We think it's going to work because it's already, we know that most institutions already have long-standing programs. So all we're doing is updating and reflecting that in the extension programs in NRS, and we'll have another chance, because we're doing this in stages, we'll have another chance to look holistically at it at the next plan of work phase next April. So proceed as normal, but the nice thing is that you can stage those and get them ready without necessarily dropping them on, at NIFA's doorstep, and have that ability to do that. So we think that's a plus up from what we were planning on for this release. You also have the same filtering and sorting for all of the extension programs that research will have as well. So that'll be nice. It'll be a full list of all the projects and programs going on. And another one, now this isn't related to extension, but it is something that was asked for because we did testing from usability perspective. There's a code that follows along with the knowledge area, the KAs, that research has to report on or has to capture. We've added the code in front of that because a lot of folks said they use that number as a quicker way to reference it. But I want to highlight because this is sort of part of the agile process. As we go along, if we can benefit other parts of the system and improve them while we're also delivering brand new features, those will all come together as a package. So I wanted to bring that up and make sure people are seeing that. It's a little bit of a change for extension because if, you know, for the ones that they've created so far, because they just save and then save as submit, we got rid of that concept and now your organization can manage that appropriately. We don't think it's for those organizations who really don't need that extra step. We certainly get that, but in all likelihood, that's the same person kind of managing those anyway. Most places are using, it's the state contributor who starts an extension program is the one who would be authorized to initiate it, so to speak. So we think it's probably not a big lift, but it gives an advantage if you want to review a new program internally. Any questions on that?
The chat box is empty.
I know, kind of.
I have a question, Aaron. This is Catherine from California.
Hi, Catherine. Yes.
I know before the first migration, it's focusing on projects that have critical issues. And we've talked about, we have a number of projects that don't have critical issues because that was a new field in the old program area, didn't work properly. Anyway, I'm wondering if, and you didn't want us to add critical issues at the last minute because MPLs would have to review it before this first migration. So I'm wondering if before the second migration, can we clean that up so that people don't have to add it in the new system? Because I think I understood it would trigger needing to add data to the new multi-state and integrated fields.
Yeah, we're still going to be a little stuck on that same place. I would recommend making updates to the critical issue on that second wave of folks and wait till we get that second wave into NRS. And I would just, so even if we move it over, I would wait till that's, I would wait until that second wave happens because that update will be a lot easier to make at that point.
Okay, and the only downside for us would be needing to just fill in new fields. The new form is great, don't get me wrong, but there is that new multi-state and integrated, super simple, just a couple sentences, I get it, but we will need to put something in there, correct?
Right, so if you had, so in the previous iteration for 1890 institutions, there wasn't a specific way you could flag a multi-state activity, right? You could describe it, but there wasn't any specific call out. So now that's going to be there for Evans Allen, for example. So those projects might need to address that. For Hatch multi-state, I would suggest at this moment, because we're gonna, so the next thing we're gonna do, we don't have, as you probably noted, we don't have an integration for Nims the way that Report does. We're hot on the heels of that. It should be pretty straightforward for us to do. But in those cases, right, I wouldn't update the multi-state field set for those projects for 1862 institutions doing a Hatch multi-state. I wouldn't push on trying to get those updated in the new system until we have the Nims integration, because we may not need to have that multi-state piece addressed, right? Because the Nims data may satisfy that. We want to talk a little bit more with the research working group a little bit on that and see what it really looks like. But that's an example where you would not need to fill in a new data field, even though the system might have it right now. As far as integrated, you're right. This is all brand new. You have in the past indicated that it's an integrated project, so that will get flagged and tripped for you in the system. So what would happen is if you went to edit that project, you would need to fill in the integrated statement there. But again, our guidance, NIFA's guidance has been just 1 to 2 sentences about how that project is integrated. So that's the only lift that I would foresee happening. If you wanted to be proactive on it, and I appreciate that, that certainly would be a good idea. I also would probably just wait for the second wave of migrations before you did that, unless you had an incidental update that you needed to make immediately between now and the second wave on those older projects.
Thanks.
Absolutely, and it was a good question because I know there's a lot of angst. Like I know you guys want to keep a complete data package, and we're certainly right there with you. We'll take all the help and enthusiasm, but we also want you to do it smartly, do it in waves. Obviously, we're breaking this, data migration up. That's in part to make sure that it's looking right for everybody, right? And we're solid about it, and we didn't miss anything that we might want to pick up. But that's part of the evaluation process as soon as we go live on the old data. And then the next wave will be, how do you fill in anything that's new? As a reminder too, and this came out of our discussions, and I think it was a good update, we are going to allow 8,000 characters as the max limit for non-technical summary and methodology, so you wouldn't have to trim those back. There was some thought maybe we would have to do that, but you won't have to do that. We've expanded that, so that won't be much of a conversion. And hopefully the rest of the migration will also save you a lot of time. You won't have to retool anything. It's only adding that, potentially probably just the integrated and maybe some multi-state descriptions.
So Erin, we have a couple questions, which
Yeah, I'm trying to read through it, but yeah, let's see if we can tackle those. Yeah, once a project initiation is approved by NIFA and NRS, is the project information to anyone, or would it be viewable only to the PDN or organizational administrator? So right now, approved projects will be available to users who have access, who have a role in your institution.
and they'll be accessible to all of NIFA who have been given access to the system,
Right.
which right now are all of our national program leaders. A lot of our leadership has access to it because they've been serving as NPLs and helping to review the annual reports and the plans of work. So we have given a lot of them access, but no, it's not public.
Not yet. And that's just so just forecasting sort of the process. We want to go through the full POW cycle so that there's really a full package on that. Like just the initiation data doesn't tell you the whole story, right? So we'll see the whole story when we do progress or final or annual reports. And so by that time, we'll have a much better idea of when and how we're going to move that to the public. It certainly is public. Some of it is public information. So obviously any requests will be handled appropriately. But right now it's a closed system.
And Lynn says
project
changes. Yes, so the NPLs have been informed to clear their queues. That includes new initiations, project changes. So we will be sending out another reminder to them. They have until the 21st of May to clear out everything that's in their queue. We don't think, based on the last count that we got, that it's an abundance of things that they need to work on. So we're feeling pretty confident that they will get through all those things. If you know who your NPL is, you could ping them, I think, and ask them when they'll get that done. But I do know a lot of them are, in panel. They're trying to get through the annual reports. I think most of the plans of work are reviewed, but we have notified them. So we will keep an eye on that. Erin gets a number every few days from the other contractors as to what's out there and pending. So we'll be monitoring that pretty closely as we get closer to that cutoff date for them.
Yeah. And we'll work closely with all the different stakeholders to kind of figure out what makes sense. We would really hope that in general terms, that the entry of a new project or program, if it had to be done, would be pretty easy to do. But at the same time, we appreciate continuity and we want to make sure that there's less disruption for you all. So we'll be evaluating that. If you get stuck, we're going to be keeping an eye out how to keep you unstuck, right? And not leave anything behind that's useful. Few projects that will end in September, but faculty want to request for extension. How do we enter the extension system? I don't know, Lynn, what do you think? Do you think that maybe the best thing would just be to start up another project?
They're just extending for 1 year. they could close out and report. We're not shutting report down in a year. So we could treat those extensions like the ones that are finishing this fiscal year.
This is John. This is a question I ask. The reason is because of pandemic. There's some faculty, their progress has been delayed, so they feel they couldn't accomplish their objective, before September when the project is ending. So they would like a request for extension. So since you said, this will not switch to the new system, so it will still on the old system. Do we suppose?
Well, so if you do put in the extension now and it gets approved in report, we will migrate it because it'll have an end date that takes you beyond this fiscal year.
Okay, so we just do this month. Is that okay?
Yeah, I would do it ASAP if you want to be
Yeah.
migrated.
Yeah, in this case, like if you know a change is necessary and needed, I would recommend doing that. And then
We can still do that in report. I apologize. I just caught the tail end of that.
yeah, you can
Yeah.
still make changes. We're trying to get the NPLs was the 21st was our cutoff for them. We'd really like to not have to keep going back and grabbing more data. If we had to, we could, but it'd be best if we got everything wrapped up by the 21st. Hopefully that kind of approval wouldn't take very much, right? You just put it in. NPL is probably not going to object as long as it's, feasible, right? Allowable.
Okay, we'll do that. You said it's before 21st?
Yeah, get it in like ASAP. Give the NPL a couple of days to review it.
Okay.
On another one, John, you have an IACUC approval pending where you
Yeah.
want to enter the.
Just waiting for SAUC approve number. So, because this project has not started yet. So once we get a SAUC approve number, do we still enter that approve number in the old system? Or in the new system?
Yeah, in the old system we allow pending, right? And but were you approved already is the question?
No, the project has been deferred because of SAUC approve.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, so the rule on that one is changing a little bit, right? In the new system, the rule is going to be you need to have the IACUC approval date already in hand before you submit to NIFA, so you can avoid the deferral.
Okay. So
For that one, I would
ask them to enter in the new system, right?
Right. So what I would do is you have it kind of entered in report. That data is not just going to disappear. It'll still be there for you.
Okay.
When you get your IACUC approval, copy and paste the data that is useful to you from the old report record and put it into NRS with the approval date for IACUC. Submit it anew, and you can talk to the NPL and just remind them that you now have the approval. So
Okay.
don't be looking backwards though. Don't update the old report one. They won't go back and look at those.
Okay.
In the new
Okay.
system.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Mhm.
A PD who is concerned about the privacy of information included in a project initiation. For PDs who might have sensitive research information, this could be a concern.
We're going to have to address that. We'll have to pull in our policy folks and figure out how we handle those situations. We have a lot of projects that are programs on the competitive side that also have these concerns. And so we don't really get a lot of information from them in their initiations or their reports for that reason. NIFA, and correct me, Aaron, if I'm wrong about this, but report hasn't been able to handle these sensitivities. We'll have to see if we can come up with a solution for that with the new technology, but can't make any promises at this point. It's not something we've dealt with yet.
Yeah, I mean, the vague reference I have in my head is usually like the SBIR kind of programs, which obviously are not going to be in NRS yet. And I don't know if there are overlaps or kind of supporting pieces, but in either case, the prerogative will be the same, that if data is going into the system that is protected according to regulation or statute, of course, we're going to find a way to redact that or protect it in the proper ways. As far as NIFA seeing it, right, it'd probably be walled off by the roles who are allowed to see that. So we would build those in. As far as the institution, you know, if we have more restrictions that are needed for certain types of projects, that's feasible, or certain pieces of the data. So we'll gather those requirements and we'll build it in. I would also suspect that some of that also has to do with intellectual property, patents, and those kinds of things, which are the results portion. So definitely very, very apropos to that discussion. So we'll fold it into our notes there. Because we're focused on capacity, you know, hopefully that's there. If there's any data that would be considered sensitive or PII, of course, we will handle that and it'll be protected. And then those pieces of information that would go to the public, much like the report data that is available in like Data Gateway and other places, we'll follow a similar pattern and make sure that we're clear from a policy perspective and, you know, loop back with you all in case there's some concerns that maybe we've never talked about. So good question. And yeah, we hope that, you know, our practices, you know, we're trying to follow CIO and IT best practices and conforming to all the regulations with regard to that. So we won't be letting things into the public that wouldn't be allowed. All right. What was our next? Oh, why don't I touch on this since we're moving a little bit past the halfway point here. We want to give you a heads up about, and this is an important piece of the way we're trying to do things, right? Yes, we had to do a bigger piece of the pie, so to speak, of the functionality to bring this research process project forward. We obviously took our time and were deliberative, meeting with working groups and making sure that the requirements were tested and vetted. However, we have a lot of the baseline functionality now established. We aren't establishing a brand new portal, for example, but we have a base to build on, in other words. So you should hopefully start seeing many more features coming down the pike. And we want to get you excited about that and get you focused about when you're going to see certain things. Also gives you an idea of where the attention is, because we're going to learn new things about what we put in the system, and that's going to be done in tandem here. We want you guys to be along for that ride, but here's the first glimpse of it. While notifications and emails are not something that we put in the MVP, I'm very happy to report we made some really good progress and we've got a proof of concept going. So we don't think it's going to be very long. So it's going to be one of our next big priorities after we release this research initiation piece. Also, already mentioned Nims integration for Hatch multi-state. We want to do this in very similar fashion to what you're used to in report. We actually hope it makes, we might even be able to pick up some new things that we hadn't thought of before. There's some backend processing that NIFA does. We'd like to make that smoother, which hopefully will get it available to you more quickly, more in close alignment with the way the NIMS process is executed. Also, the second data migration, we aren't going to let that go for too long. We don't want it to go too long. So we'll get that in. Like I said, we broke it up to reduce the risk and to make sure if there's anything else we missed that we need to go get, we can, not only the projects that we moved over, but any of the other ones remaining. We definitely need to have that in place very, very soon. And for all the reasons that we've already mentioned, we want to give you ample opportunity to make updates as needed, kind of see the full data set. So we get it and we're on it. Improving organization data, there's going to be some changes here. We're trying to adopt a model where we are in alignment with the System for Award Management, SAM, which, as for some of you who might deal with other parts of the grants process, knowing things like your DUNS number and what will become the Unique Entity Identifier, UEI, those changes are coming down the pike. We'd rather not have you know, an outdated copy or outdated set of information about your institution, and make sure that that's flowing forward in the NRS, and populating all the artifacts and the projects, things like address, things like which funding types your institution is eligible for, all those things, you know, thinking beyond plan of work type of funding types, but minority serving institution calculations are done every year. We want to make sure that information has a authoritative single source of truth. And so we want to try to get that updated, and it'll make everything smoother and make a lot more sense as you do transactions, not just with NRS, but throughout the life cycle of the grant. Also, I put it in bold a little bit here, right, Lynn? So it's the results module. That's a huge piece of work. We're going to continue rolling our process with research working group and extension working group, and thinking about, well, how do we make that annual report really, really high quality? How do we pull together all these different elements so it's a much more integrated, intuitive feel? You know, we'll obviously have to start tackling things like progress reports and financial reports and the OGFM supplemental that we've always keep referencing, that weird name, right? All of those things are tangential to the results module, but the focus has not changed in the many years we've been working on this, which is to make it an integrated approach and to up the quality quotient, increase the quality of the information that you all are reporting, and making that streamlined so that you guys aren't burdened with things that aren't necessary or aren't really used by any process. That's next. I also want to point out, we're going to do other improvements. Spell check. It does work in the current system, but we can always make improvements. We know that word count, the character count, all that stuff, it's vexing, and we appreciate you guys being flexible. We're continuing to work on that. You'll have a solution, but we always want to make it better. Lots of ways to do that. I know that people want to tell us as much as they can in the limited space that we're allowing. And it's frustrating when you get to the end and you hit save, it doesn't work. So we know that. We're trying to make it as good as possible. And then there's the export features. I want to talk a little bit about that. So we know that a lot of folks like to take this and export it and take the data and pass it on to people who might not be in the system. We've tried very hard to make that a priority and get it into the system by the end of May. But right now it's looking like that may not be available because we really want to do it right. You will be able to get the information out. We have some alternatives brewing. But we want to be transparent about that and know that we are going to try to make that possible as soon as we can. And as I said, it's the first thing we pick up after we finish the core functionality that we've just gone through. But all of those things are going to continue to be materializing. As far as time frame, like I said, shouldn't be more than a few weeks into June when we should have an eye on when that's going to be possible in the fullest way we know how. And again, we'll have a guide on how to get the initiation information out of the system very soon. So with that said, I also wanted to certainly take more questions, but I think show you some of the latest wireframes. I know wireframes are not the same as the actual functionality. We'll be doing that soon. But I wanted to show that we kind of moved, we've added some things. You can see new styles are kind of be coming in, making it much more accessible, making sure that navigation's much more intuitive, and that all of the fields that we've kind of been going back and forth on the last few months that build on the sort of simplistic approach, that a more simplistic approach that was initially proposed. We've added a lot of things. Just to reiterate, things like the prefix and the organizational project number, those things are going to be in the system available for you. We'll pull over data that's in report to if you put it in before, so that'll be there. The start and end date, this is a much simpler execution. You have a max of 5 years. You can make those updates according to your own internal policies. We don't have some weird rules about, well, 1 year in this case and 2 years in those cases. As long as it's within 5 years, that's really up for you, how you want to carry that out. Project director, of course, as I mentioned before, this is going to be built on the people who have been the primary project director. So we won't see co-PDs yet, more to do on that, but those will be here. Performing department is in. We have both that code that came from report and anything that you previously put into report will be available. We're going to talk about what the long term of that is and how we might be able to edit and change those things. We're just going to move it in place and let you keep reusing it as needs come up. And as we have more discussions, we might make that more manageable for you, let you kind of have more control on that one. Non-technical summary, we haven't really made any changes here. We hope this is a much more compact, high quality, high impact statement that tells us what you're up to for that research project methodology, very inherent to that as well. Integrated activities, we've talked about that. Oh, and this is I don't know when it didn't pop up to us, but it did yesterday. We have made a change in the feedback that we've gotten from working groups and from you all, and in sort of discussions with NPLs. We are no longer going to collect the percentage of research, extension, and education. That will not be collected as part of the initiation data anymore. So if you recall some discussions about, well, what percentage of research and education, or is extension able to be combined with this or that? That question is now gone. We are going to have to take a more holistic approach to that. And again, we're leaning on the principle that we aren't going to collect information that is estimated and that we're not really clear about how it can fit into the new system. So we are going to eliminate that from the initiation, and we're going to continue visiting how that kind of information would be useful for reporting. But we are keeping the basic applied developmental breakdown for the research component. So that's still there. Animal health is also there. Multi-state, again, for Hatch multi-state, we're going to ask that you put your Nims number and your objective in this. If you need to start a project right away, that's what we're going to do. And hopefully before long, we'll have the Nims integration and the sort of same, drop down list and set of objectives will be available, and we'll make more sense of that. But we're leaving it there, and we are expecting 1890s to enter that data in. Classifications, subject of investigation, field of science are still there. You'll notice that there's a code in front of it. That's going to be there as part of the MVP, which is good, or I'm sorry, the first release. And then the assurances. These are the human subjects and vertebrate animal questions that you're used to. We hope it's a little bit more intuitive, and NIFA has made a policy clarification that these projects should not be submitted until approval dates have been received. Process-wise, so if you're thinking about, okay, I'm an organizational administrator, I need to start a research project, I would come into the new system, I would click a button that says add under the project's programs title or the dashboard, and then I get this form, I fill it out, and I have a choice. I can save it at any point. I create a draft of that. I can stop, go get lunch, come back, make an update, go talk to someone, get more information. Whatever I need to do, I can keep saving and adding information until I'm ready to move it into an organizational review, in which case I would click a button like this, submit, right? The status will change from draft into organizational review. I think that's pretty consistent with exactly what report says. And then you'll have a status on that in your dashboard. And the dashboard, I know we've got some questions coming. Let me just show you. Sorry about that. I gotta find it. Apologize for jumping around here. There it is. Okay. So this is what we refer to as the dashboard. Note that this left-hand menu that you're seeing, that will not be in the application. This is just for navigation on the wireframe. You'll just see the main part of the screen. but these are the fields that are very consistent with the way report is, and in talking with various groups, what we're going to do. Once you've saved a draft, or if you've submitted to organizational review, you'll see your project listed here, your research project, and you'll see different statuses according to wherever it lies in there. If you wanted to pick it up, you would come in there and you'd be able to see, oops, sorry. I know I had this down. Once you click on it, right, you'll see a view of the project initiation data. You'll see all of it streamlined. It'll be very easy to scroll and review quickly. And you'll have the ability to, if you have the permission, you can make some changes, right? If this was an organizational review, or if it's still in draft and you have the permissions to make changes to that, you could do that. Or if this project were in organizational review and it was ready to go to NIFA, you could click the submit button and it'll move on to NIFA. And NIFA will pick it up. They can defer, decline, or approve. All right, so, oops, sorry, let me just jump back to the form for what it's worth. And why don't we take a pause here? I know we're getting closer to the top of the hour. We have some questions here. Why don't we do that? And then we can wrap up.
All right, so John asks, is NRS for both research and extension? Yes. So we finally have you guys integrated, at least part of the process. So we launched the extension initiation last September. So the extension folks have been in there, have had access for Smith Lever and 1890 extension. And now we're adding in the research folks.
Tracy, a similar question, and Tracy, you got it right. One for research and one for extension when it's an integrated project, correct. There's more to do through in terms of how do you report and how do they crisscross. But the idea is that we have to have accounting for how the research funds are expended and how the extension funds are expended. So we need to see how those efforts are being worked separately. Also, will there be double annual reporting? Well, that's exactly a good question. We want it to be a seamless and integrated situation, but we have to figure out how do you report what was accomplished on the research versus the extension side. Like there's going to be some handoff, right? Like, hey, I did some research and extension shared it with a bunch of people, right? So how do we tell that story in a cogent way, in a way that doesn't create a lot of extra burden? And we hope to learn that as we develop the results module.
Okay, thank you. So just to clarify that the research initiation will reflect only research with the exception of the box in response to the integrated question. And then where I guess we don't have the RTE split anymore. Okay, so it will look like a research project with the exception of that one field and vice versa for extension.
Right, both should kind of have the mindset when they start them up that they're integrated. You might coordinate on some concepts in terms of how to describe it, but the purpose of that box for research is to talk about the research aspects of the integrated project.
Okay, and I know this isn't an issue right now, but just down the road, when you do add the co-PDs, you know, sometimes the co-PDs would be contributing to the research or extension or both. So would we split them up accordingly, meaning that sometimes people would appear on both sides for the same project? Yeah,
I mean, Tracy, you got a good use case there, good thought process there, because yeah, that's part of the reason we want to think through the co-PD thing, because right now the way report captures co-PDs, those aren't people, they're just lines on a database. You know what I mean? Like we don't know that they are the same person other than their names match, right? So if we made them actual users in the system, that kind of thing would be like, you could pick people who exist and say they're there. Mm-hmm. Later we could say, oh, this is a split appointment if we start going down the path of which people match your number of people assigned to a project. And those are some things that definitely good question. you probably have to do it from an accounting perspective. Like, I pay this person, what projects are they on? And so that makes sense, but how do we reconcile the way that NRS is collecting that? Great questions, and we'll have to have more answers. Also, another reason why we're not ready to jump into the co-PD piece yet.
Right, and I definitely follow the logic here. My concern is that when I look at the number of integrated projects we have, the administrative burden for us and our faculty is going to really skyrocket. And trying to explain to our faculty that they have to enter, they no longer describe a project as integrated. They have to pull out the research and extension and enter them in two different places. That's going to be problematic on our end.
Well, I think that's something for further discussion, because I think that's a great question. I don't know if we would, hopefully I'm not implying that you would have to be completely separate statements. I mean, I think you could make an integrated statement that both would use. Lynn, tell me if you're thinking differently.
Well, no, but I think I'm going to go back to your point about how do you account for the dollars? So if that integrated project is pulling both Smith Lever and Hatch, or the equivalent on the 1890 side, then you would have to initiate projects and programs against those funding lines.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is, like, let's say we have a lead PD who is research integrated, split in their appointment, and they're going to be doing both research and extension. So they would be writing up a research component, adding in the integrated statement on the research side. Then they will enter the extension project initiation with that same integrated statement. So they will have done essentially 2 initiations for this exact same project.
Hi, this is Lynn from UConn.
Yeah.
I just want to mention that for extension, there's supposed to be extension programs.
New message.
So the extension program might not be each individual PI's contribution to a project. Extension, what we're putting in the NRS for extension are bigger, are supposedly bigger programs, not individual extension projects. A project might be part of a program.
Right. Right. We had a discussion briefly with the research working group on that yesterday. And that's definitely going to take some more thinking about how we're going to handle that. And it might require some adjustments on the extension side. Or you mark that as an integrated program on the extension side, but knowing that not all of it is integrated. When we get into the reporting pieces, this is where we're going to have to work out those details. But back to Tracy's point, if you have an appointment that's research and extension and you're counting that toward an integrated activity, if that appointment is supported by both Hatch and Smith Lever dollars, I think under this construct, you would have to initiate on both the research side and the extension side to account for those dollars being applied.
Well, and I think there's some good comments. Oh, go ahead, Tracy.
I guess I take your point. To me, it just makes more sense to write it as an integrated project itself and have that integrated description count toward both research and extension in terms of the funding accountability. It's really going to create more work on our end. And I thought one of the points of this NRS was to reduce administrative burden, but from the way I understand it, in some ways it really streamlines, but in other ways it really increases the effort on our end. And, we leave it up to the faculty to tell us what's integrated or not. And we have to spend, X percentage of our dollars on integrated projects. And if they see, okay, if I say integrated, that creates my work burden. They may just say, no, it's not, for their own ease. And then we can't truly capture integrated projects.
But if it's an integrated project and you're spending Hatch and Smith Lever dollars, how do you capture that now?
Well, in report, it's written as an integrated project. It was never written as a research project, you know, and then with an extension component. I guess my point is, why do they have to do it twice? Why can't they just write it as an integrated project and have that two birds, one stone?
Because eventually you're going to have to account for those Smith Lever dollars.
Right, but shouldn't that box of saying this is integrated allow us to do that?
You mean Mir?
Hi, this is Lynn from UConn. Is that Tracy asking the question?
Yes.
Tracy, do you work with the Smith Lever
No,
folks
I
now?
have on the research side, then I have account
Side. Okay, so I think you might need to have a conversation with your extension folks and see what they're putting in for extension projects into the new reporting system. That might help answer your questions. But a researcher with an extension appointment should not need to go in and put in an extension program and a research project initiation and an extension project initiation. Your extension folks who manage the Smith Lever projects and programs should be taking care of the Smith Lever dollars in the reporting.
See, eventually, you guys, this is the basis for getting rid of that OGFM supplemental. So what we need you to do in these initiations is start that tracking of these dollars are going toward an integrated or a multi-state activity, so that on the back end, on the reporting side of this, you'll know where those dollars have gone. So if you have an integrated activity and you only initiate the research side and you don't have a counterpart on your extension side, you're going to underreport on extension. And yes, it looks like it's double work, but if we can eliminate a form and all that messy accounting for you down the road, it's going to be worth coordinating with your Smith Lever guys, even if it's a joint appointment. I think this initial work will help us down the road be able to say, here's where your dollars went. A regular Smith Lever integrated, Smith Lever multi-state. That's the vision in doing it this way. So bear with us while we work through these next months in the reporting module. We'll keep the chat box. We have notes, and we will definitely come back to some of these issues, but I think it's going to clear up for you when we get in the system fully and you start working with it and we get into that reporting phase where things are going to roll up for you once we get the initial information in here.
Yep. Thanks, Lynn. And I agree. I think there's some good comments in the chat box as well. I think the model makes sense. That I think if you have a research project that's integrated that you've already flagged, right? Those should have some sort of extension program that represents the way that those activities are being carried out. So hopefully those new extension programs that are taking flight right now, many of them already in the system, will create that, but we may need to look more closely and say, well, here are these 5 research projects, where do they marry up with the extension program, and how do we make that reporting easier? And that's the question we're going to ask next. The results, like how do we report that? Because that's another place you could save it. No need to necessarily duplicate results if they can be shared, but we'll talk more about that.
The other thing too, maybe this will help the researchers in this discussion. You currently do double reporting if you are spending Hatch and Evans Allen dollars. You do all the report requirements, and then you have to turn around and also contribute to the annual report. We are going to try to eliminate that double burden of reporting on the research folks. So maybe that'll make up for what looks currently like a little bit of extra work up front.
Well, so we're topping the hour. This is, and Tracy, we could stay on, talk a little bit more too if we wanted to, and we can kind of continue revisiting this. But let us know how that conversation goes, and I think we should bring it up at the next webinar again to help help with that process.
And we're also seeing in the chat box, Catherine said Hatch integrated dollars different from Smith-Lever integrated. So there might be a lot of different use cases that we have to accommodate in the system. And that's, that's why we have our working groups. We ask them a lot of questions. We come to you all and float some of these ideas and get your feedback. But, this is why it's important for us to know what we're all trying to do, what you guys need to track, that questions that we're trying to answer on the NIFA side. How do we use the data? And that's why some of this work can be a bit tedious and laborious because we're trying to meet the needs of a lot of different users. So, okay, FAQs. All right.
And one of the FAQs is, are you going to have a new guide to replace the report manual? Yes. Yes, we will. We can't obviously dismiss the report manual because it will still be applicable to other activities in report. In fact, that's one of our FAQs. What's happening with report? Did we put it in here, Lynn?
I think so.
Report will continue to function until all the capabilities and features of report have been migrated to NRS. Keep on the lookout for directions of where to report and where to do different things. We're focused on 4 funding lines: Hatch, Evans Allen, Smith-Lever, 1890 extension. Those are the 4 funding types that our NRS is going to be covering right now. Anything else would, outside those 4 funding lines, continue doing what you do today, and we'll continue letting you know how that works. But here's a question that came up, and we wanted to cover it. And I know folks, we're over an hour. We're happy to keep going. So if you need to drop, by all means, we're recording this and we'll provide these slides to you all. But as far as PD, this is an interesting one. We know PD emails change, maybe since the time they were in report. So if they were registered in report, the portal, the legacy applications with one email address, and then you ask them to go and create an eAuth account so they can get into NRS, and they have to use a different email address, often the domain changes. And that happens quite frequently with institutions, with any organization really. What they should do is proceed. They're going to need to have access to the email address so they can complete the registration. They should do that. The next thing they should do is they should reach out to their organizational administrator, and the organizational administrator should then identify what the new account is so they know what the email address is correct. They should remove the other one. When they do that, projects that are associated to that person obviously are going to lose that PD. And so what the next step is to go into those projects. Oh, I have kindergarten going on in the background. Sorry about that. Lost the train of thought there, but so those projects now won't have a valid active user anymore, we'll want to replace that with the new account. The other thing is, though, this is not to confuse the idea that if you have a PD who has left a project and you're going to do what might be called PD transfer, that PD transfer or change of a project director for a project, a substantive change, that does need to be approved through the Office of, I'm sorry, the Award Management Division, AMD, that's part of the Office of Grants and Financial Management. So you would put in the change to the PD as per normal in NRS, submit that, that will go through approval, and the NPLs, we're working with them to make sure that substantive changes to PDs go through the appropriate approvals on AMD for that to occur. That's probably not, that's not a change in policy, but it might be something for awareness for folks. But we'll handle those. We'll be along for the ride as those occur. But if the PD needs to change email addresses when they register with EOF, they should get in touch with the org admin and we can walk through the rest of that.
Aaron, somebody asks, Crystal Clark asks, what happens if a PD has 2 email addresses in report? Will both be moved to NRS?
Yes, if they have an active project. And again, the answer there would be one of those should be the winner. And if it turns out to be a third, fine. You guys are in charge of who your users are and you can identify who the right person is. We, from a systems perspective, don't know that, right? All we know is what email addresses have been have fulfilled the identity verification process. You guys are in charge of telling us the right answer. So if they have 2 email addresses, probably one should win and then the other one will lose and be deactivated, removed. You'll have to go in, reassociate those other projects to the right PD. Again, you should always strive to update the PD information to the latest information possible. All right, let's jump to the next one. And again, obviously there's something fun going on in class, much more fun than this.
It's very popular in the chat box.
Yeah. How can an organizational administrator complete it? Okay, we talked about this one. So again, you make the change and the NPL and AMD should be working together with you if they need further information or forms filled out. There's a difference, of course, between a substantive change like a PD is really changing versus this email situation. We're going to be working with them to make a common sense approach there. What approvals are required for research projects? I think we went through this one. Same process that you go through before and report.
We are making a slight difference, however, on the NIFA side, because the responsibility for conducting peer and merit reviews lies with the land-grant universities as per the legislation. We are going to be writing some guidance for our national program leaders for what does it mean to conduct an administrative review. And I think I mentioned here on the last webinar that they will be looking almost exclusively, maybe I can say, to the methodology section and the non-technical summary section. If those are written well and they're complete, there should be no reason for them to be asking for a lit review. If those are not, providing them with sufficient information to make sure it aligns with NIFA's mission, it aligns with the scope of the legislation, then they will come back to you. They'll defer it. They'll come back to you for more information instead of asking for a proposal. And there was a question in the chat box from Jay in French on the proposals. I do not have a response yet from policy. They are drafting their response to my decision memo. I should be receiving that this week, and then we will take it up to exec council and get leadership's input. So I should have an answer soon for you guys on that one, but I don't yet. And Dr. Castile has been busy this week testifying on the Hill for our appropriations. So we've tried to leave her alone this week so she could focus on her preparation. But soon, we'll get there.
Extension, hopefully we covered this one as well. This is the first round of these going through, of course, and we are trying to, you know, marry up the different stages of the development with the plan of work review process, but nothing is going to be different. Hold on a second. So we're planning to do the same thing that has always been the case, which is you describe your extension programs as part of the plan of work exercise. We have made them more discrete so you can track individual extension programs in this way. But the idea is that it should be reviewed in context with the plan of work and the critical issues and see how they all come together. If you start a project in the middle of the year, of course, you know, we want to let everybody in on what's going on. So NPL and the state liaisons will probably be able to see that. They may have questions, but this is an iterative process. The idea is that as soon as you submit your extension program, after doing an organizational review, you're good to go. All right. What will change about Hatch multi-state projects initiated in NRS? So in the period until we get the Nims piece integrated and it works a lot like you're used to in Report, we are just going to ask that you, if you have to start a project before that integration occurs, there is an option in the dropdown. I can show it to you, I believe. You'll have an option for Hatch multi-state for 1862's institutions. You'll pick that, it'll look the same. And what we're asking for you to do is put in the Nims project number, the Nims number, and the objective you're going to be working on into the multi-state description box. That's it. It should be hopefully a very easy copy paste situation. Again, this is just short-lived until we get the full integration working. And then in that case, you will get a new field where you can pick the Nims number and you can pick your objectives kind of like you do today. So just be patient on that, but we didn't want to interrupt it. Functionality, if you had, you know, held off on starting that research multi-state project, you can proceed in doing that if you need to. And hopefully, again, we don't have an exact timeline on that one. That sort of depends on sort of the integration activities, but it is one of our top priorities, as you saw right after this release. Okay, let me hit the couple last ones. What will happen to Report? We talked about this. Until all functionality is moved over to the new system, Report will continue doing what it does for all the other funding types other than Hatch Multi-State, and Evans Allen. Also, you should proceed to doing your final technical reports for any projects scheduled to end by the end of this fiscal year, September 30th. All right. Oh yeah, this one. So this kind of comes back about the research extension breakdown now that we've removed those percentages. So I'm going to read what we wrote because Lynn and I worked on this. NIFA is adhering to the principle of not collecting estimated data, so it's no longer in the initiation. More information is also needed on how this percentage is being used for reporting before integrating it into NRS. Since this is also the first time integrated projects and programs are being reported together, we will need to evaluate the best way to report such details. All right. I think this is timely. the last slide will tell people how they can get this recording. Lynn, I think you have a copy of the deck and we'll be able to get that out to folks so they can also share the information in here.
Yeah.
FAQs, guides, quick guides, etc., are in really good shape. I can kind of show folks. I don't know if I have it up. If I have it up, I can give you a sneak peek.
While you're looking for the guide, Catherine had an interesting question, which you haven't said anything. So I think I know what the answer is, but I said we should confirm. So the extension programs that have been put into the system, once we do the release and they're affected by this organizational review, they don't have to resubmit anything, do they?
I hope not. Let me check on the technical answer. We probably want to put them into the submitted to NIFA category.
Okay.
Let them matriculate like everything else, but we're assuming that you're already in progress on that stuff, and so and it's already probably been touched on in your plans of work already. So it's not like it's new work. So we just hopefully get to that next cycle, and then everything will start making more sense from a, you know, why did I start this now versus later, and when do I get it approved? So no need to reapprove it, at least that I anticipate.
Yeah, I honestly don't know how many of the NPLs have been in to look at the extension. Focused on the annual reports and the plans of work. So I don't really, I'll try to go in tonight and poke around that section, but I just don't know how many of them have gone in there. So we'll see, we'll test that before the release and see how.
And hopefully, like, from thinking from that perspective, most institutions are having people who are state contributors manage most of this work. And they would also have the ability to do the submission. So it'd be like a double click, like click yes to NIFA review or to org review, and then click yes for NIFA review or NIFA submission, and you're done. But I think we are going to flag them as either approved or submitted to NIFA, whatever the right term is there. Sorry, I don't have the exact answer. We'll screenshot it and show it to you.
Okay. And then Joanne asked, will the new NRS manual be provided prior to having to use the new system? Yes, it's almost done.
Yeah, it's here.
Tweaking it.
You know, goodies about the roles. Someone made a comment last time that I thought was really good about explaining a little bit about ARERA, what we mean by that when we say it, giving you different views for all different roles, examples of how to write a non-technical summary, or what elements are part of a non-technical summary for research and for extension. So some goodies there. And the nice thing is we want to keep organically growing this, making sure, so when you see it, if you're like, hey, this wasn't here, where do I find out about it? So we have the system guide, which is, yes, a little bit more about how the system works and what the features are. I'm sorry, I don't mean to scroll if you can't keep up. It's not, I wanted to try to show one thing. We'll also have a quick guide on role management. So if you're an organizational administrator, how do you do those functions? What does it look like? And how do you get yourself straight about, you know, the new roles? Because now you have research and extension and plan of work type of roles, and maybe you haven't really seen that. And then third, we have a quick guide for onboarding, like getting an eAuth account and then requesting a role. Those guides are sort of there. We're making updates if needed, but they should all be in the system. FAQs will also be helpful. Some of the ones we showed you here, but we got a ton more, all updated to reflect research. So, yep, finally got to the page here. Will there be a PI guide?
Yeah, I think we definitely have more information to share, and we want to document the requirements. You know, why are we asking for things? Maybe some more explanation on how we use the information, because we think that's helpful to you all. You certainly asked that question a lot. Whether we put it into this guide or we have a separate guide, we haven't made that determination yet.
Yep. Oh, and the website, we're updating the website language, right, Lynn? So
Yep.
hopefully that's, you know, we had some language like, hey, this is coming kind of about September, and now we're way past that. And so now we're graduating into a little bit more stable, more mature system. So you're going to see those changes. And then hopefully we'll start looking at, you know, reporting cycles like, okay, hey, the results module is coming next, but what do I do for a progress or for this kind of stuff? We'll keep gearing up for that in the months to come, and obviously let you know when things like the notifications and emails are coming, when the Nims integration happens, that kind of stuff. We'll keep having webinars, but we'll try to keep the websites up to date. Yep, we have another webinar on the 26th, in fact. I think next week will be too quick, and the 26th is just before we put the stuff onto the street for you guys to use. And yeah, I just saw the answer here. Yes, Catherine, I'm saying that what you have submitted in the past for extension, you shouldn't have to take any action on. I want to make sure show you what that looks like for the existing. So we'll let you know.
All right. I don't think we missed anything.
Webinars recording link is here.
Yep.
Oh, good question. Webinars for PIs, PDs. Sure.
We can, yep. If you guys want something like that, we can definitely do it. They're always welcome to come to this one. You can forward the Zoom invitation. That's not a protected invitation. So yes, so share that. If you have PIs, we could design one directly for them. What skimming through here. There's another email question. Currently, there are situations where an email address migrated from a site such as grants.gov for a competitive grant, which is different than the email and report associated with capacity or formula projects. Looking forward in NRS, will making the addresses the same for both projects be possible, easy to do? Well, in NRS, because you have to register an email with e-authentication, and then that email is how your organizational administrator is going to pull you up, how they're going to find you in the NRS. So you're going to have to settle on one email for everything that will be in NRS. So when we get to that competitive side of the house, you'll have to reconcile all that. When we pull those projects over into the new system, they will have to be under whatever you registered with e-authentication. All right, I think I covered everything. If I didn't, you're still online. Unmute yourself and let us know. Yeah, the integrated multi-state is going to be interesting. But we'll have to talk to both groups and come up with some creative ways to keep that workload streamlined, make those connections, learn about the different use cases. Because we haven't collected a lot of detailed information on integrated and multi-state, there's probably a lot that we, the team, need to learn from you all. So, you know, think about how all the different ways that you guys construct your integrated and multi-state projects. Maybe we'll do some sort of data call through the research working group and extension working group so that they're well informed about the diversity across the different institutions, and they can represent you guys at least in the first couple of steps of designing. They're informed, they can bring that information to us, and then we'll develop some concepts and then come back out to the broader group. All right, thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop recording.